start now. So, hello everyone. My name is Valerii Zhurylo, and I'm a team lead of the project Rite-Solutions 15.5 Proposal Development System. And it is my pleasure to welcome Yannick Almeida, Scrum Master for this project, Lapierre, software developer, and our client Rite-Solutions. Unfortunately, Thomas Santos wasn't able to join us on Zoom, but we are really pleasant to have the rest of the team, Michael, Alex, and Lee. So first we would like to start discussing our project by introducing our client, maybe giving a little bit of a background, and also describing what is the purpose of the project. So let's start with our client. Rite-Solutions is a rapidly growing company. They design, develop, and deploy mission-critical software and systems for the government and commercial markets. The growth of our client is being fueled by the developing proposals on the request of the customers, such as government organizations. So when we talk about the purpose of the project, the content of previously developed proposals is widely reused and enhanced. And for that matter, the purpose of the project is to develop a system that would be able to simplify the process. Basically, able to create a 50% of the project in 5 days. So what we mean by that is easily reuse and structured data of the past developed proposals, allow decomposition of other documents by the smaller components, and overall, we would like to provide the ability for the user to support the import, search, and retrieval of Word documents. So when we talk about the goals and objectives of this project, we first of all want to describe the complex content of and the requirements of the project by showcasing the software architecture diagram that will go on in a second. And the software architecture diagram will represent the layers of the complexity of the system in terms of the business architecture, technology, and application. So let's start with business. We know that our user will have 3 different roles as the administrator, proposal coordinator, and proposal developer. Those users would be able to import Word documents of past proposals, search of the components of those documents later on in the system by using keywords, tags, other metadata, as well as publishing new drafts of proposals using components found in the search results. When we're talking about the application layer, we have 4 major components. And first being component content management system that allows us to manage our digital content, as well as web application that allows the user to use it through web, and word processor for being able to read and create Word documents, as well as a database that store all the necessary information securely. Our next layer is technology layer. So for the technology layer, we only able to use open source software, as well as security of the sensitive information of the stored in our database, as well as we have to utilize the Docker containers for the ease of deployment of the application. And the performance scalability of the system must be considered by taking into account that many users and many documents will be utilizing that system. So this is our overall software architecture diagram that represents those 3 major layers, 3 different views of how we understand our client and how we understand their needs. So the next point we'll talk about is the information flow diagram. So we would like to show the high-level architecture, and maybe we can build the information flow diagram together with you. So, as previously mentioned, we have 3 different entities, as administrator, proposal coordinator, and proposal developer. We must also have web application that allows us to use this. And this is 5 main features that we would like to include in our application, is the import, search of the components, tagging with metadata, and rating of the components, depending on the quality, and publishing new drafts. For that, we also need to utilize the previously mentioned component content management system that will kind of give us a transition between web user application and the database where we store all the components, as well as one major component that we include that combine automation and word processing. We'll talk about each of those components later on, but this is an overview of what our high-level architecture looks like. So now we're having components, what we're going to choose for them. So for the front end, we will decide to choose a React. For the component content management system, is Strapi. For the database, MySQL. For the word processing, we utilize the Springboot to run our server with the Java library being on the backend. And for automation, we use natural language processing. So while we already showcase you what higher level architecture components we selected, we're going to describe why we selected certain components. So in front of you, you can see the decision metrics, few metrics, that basically quantitatively describe what type of components and why we choose them. So we looked it up on the different categories. We were deciding what type of solution are already available for open source instead of creating our own. As you can see on the left, there's a high-level component as a front end and a back end, as well as the metrics underneath. And on the right, the component management system and container runtime. So we were deciding by multiple criteria, like for example, is there available documentation? Can we implement and introduce in our overall system? Is that solution reliable? And so forth. Our client using capability maturity model, that's a really good practice to manage the overall development of the system. They suggested us to utilize this as well, and this is a representation of how we use it for our project. So to automate the tasks of constantly going through the components, selecting them, and attaching metadata, we representing next slide with automation, which includes the decomposition of the Word documents, as well as attaching metadata. So for the decomposition of the Word documents, we're utilizing open source Java library, docexportj, that allows us to decompose Word documents using the XML formatting. It wasn't easy, but later on we'll discuss a little bit more about that component. As well as attaching metadata. So instead of doing that over and over again, users are able to just click a few buttons and the topics will be modeled for them. So the natural language processing is a subfield of linguistics, computer science, and artificial intelligence. And in our case, we're utilizing topic modeling as our key criteria to identify what is the content of the specific component, paragraph, or section. So instead of the user going and reading those components, he can just look it up in the bullet points, basically, and understand is that what he's looking for or not.
Hello everybody, my name is Yannick Almeida, and I'm going to be talking to you guys about the word processor stack first. So the first component of our word processor stack is the programming language Java. Now Java's flexibility and popularity made it a great choice for the team to use it as their programming language. Now another component is Springboot, which is a Java-based framework, as Valerie mentioned earlier, and Springboot allows interactions with our front end through REST API requests. So on the diagram above is the interaction of what's going on through our back end to talk to our front end. As you can see on the left side, you have docx4j logic and related classes, sending information through traditional Java method calls to the Springboot controller class. From there, through some handler mapping, that information goes to the Springboot server, and then the React front end has some HTTP requests to receive that information to go to the front end. So to continue on to our word processor stack, I'm going to talk about another component that Valerie mentioned as well, called docx4j. It's an open source Java library for document manipulation, and we use this Java library in 4 unique ways. We use it for read, decomposition, tagging, and uploading. For reading, the application can look through a document and recognize the text that's within it. In decomposition, this document can then be broken down into smaller components. With those components, they are able to be tagged and stored for later use into a database for newer proposal drafts. And with upload, the Java backend is able to upload a Word document, so all of this document manipulation methods can happen. So for the user interface, the mockups were suggested by our client as a visual blueprint to what the application will look like in different scenarios. We created all of these mockups on draw.io, and we created a mockup per functionality use case to really get a better understanding of what the step-by-step process is of all the functionalities that we have within our application. So as you can see here on the board, this is a mockup for the search and result use case. At the top is a search bar where the user would enter in any keywords, and then after pressing the search button, the results would appear in the container below. Each result would have a little bit of metadata, which is about like the header name, the client name, the tags related to each component, the date that the proposal was created and published, and a rating based off the quality of the subject matter. So now that the UI design was approved by the client, we can move on to actually coding the front end. So now I'm going to talk to you guys about the front end stack. So here, first is a screenshot of what the UI currently looks like right now. There's a search bar at the top, similar to the mockups, and the results displayed with some metadata into the container below, similar to the mockups as well. So our front end stack is broken into 3 different parts: main components, API endpoints, and data fetching. So for the first part, we have main components. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, different JavaScript libraries, are all responsible for how the front end looks right now. Now, the most important JavaScript library being React.js. So React.js is an efficient and flexible JavaScript library that is made for simple, fast, and scalable UIs for web apps. It was built by Facebook, and industry greats like Netflix and PayPal are using it in their software productions right now. Another component is React Bootstrap, which is responsible for the templates in the user interface, which allows for faster and much more efficient user interface development. So moving on to our next part is our API endpoints. So we have Springboot, which allows the Java code to be launched for document decomposition. And we have Strappy, which allows us to manage our content within our database much more easier. Both of these API endpoints have embedded web servers that allow data to be sent and received from both of them. And the way that we can obtain this data is through our data fetching, the last part of the stack. Now, REST and GraphQL serve as a routing system for data flow within our program entirely. So now that we've spoken about all the components that make up our 15.5 proposal development system, just going to give us a wrap up of all the languages, frameworks, and tools that we use throughout the whole project. So first off, I'm going to start out with the front end. As you can see here, there is some languages that we mentioned already before, in addition to Node.js, which allowed us to use different JavaScript libraries for our program itself. For backend, docx4j was used for document manipulation, while Springboot was used to launch the Java code. Oh, sorry about that, went backwards. As for our database, we have MySQL to store all of our information, and our actual application was stored and containerized in a Docker with the delivery software of Docker, so that the application may work on all operating systems very smoothly. Now, as for our content management system, we use Strappy to manage the content within our application much more easier. We use Atlassian products like Confluence, Jira, and Bitbucket for version control, taking notes during meetings, and keeping track of tasks for all of our developers on our team. So these Atlassian products assisted us in our development practice of agile development. And agile development allows a team to create a project with success and speed. So having multiple Scrum meetings within the week with the team and having weekly client meetings allows for continuous and quick improvement, which is very important as our client, as Valerie mentioned before, our client is certified in CMMI, so continuous improvement is very, very important to them. For data fetching, our methods for receiving our data is REST and GraphQL. And as for our communication, Outlook was our main point of email communication between the team and the client. As for Microsoft Teams, was our main point of communication within the team, and also the client too, with video video calls and chat. So now I'm going, actually, with all this information, actually, it was very, very important to learn all of this, and we're so excited to see what this knowledge and information can do for us in our future endeavors. So I'm going to pass it off to Valerie to show us our demo.
So I hope you all enjoyed the shaky presentation that we prepared for you. It wasn't intended to be that way. As well as we were planning to having a live demo, but unfortunately we don't have the laptop working right now, but we have a recording one. So first of all, what you see in front of you is the web-based application. From the top, you can see that we have a logo, search bar, and other links. You also have the tag functionality that allows us to minimize, open, and close the filters on the left that are represented in text, as well as import the documents and create new drafts. So first of all, we can scale it up and down, and most of the components will stay together thanks to the React Bootstrap. You can filter the components by selecting different tags and clicking on them. So next, you can see that our components are represented on the middle of the screen. You can scroll them down, and you can identify what our proposal title, what is the client is, as well as additional information and brief description of what is that content has. On top, you also can see in the blue that are tags that are attached to the specific component, as well as in green, the topics that are being modeled. You can search by the keywords for the body of the component, as well as by the proposal title and so forth. By clicking on the specific components on the right side, you would be able to see additional information about the component. All the body of the component, again, there's a small representation of how it should look like, as well as the rating of the specific component. For the natural language processing on the right, you can see that by pressing on the find topics, you would be able to get at least up to 10 topics that are modeled based on the content of that component. And you would be later able to select clicking on them and submitting to the database to update what types of the components are there. By clicking on the specific components, on the check marks on the left, you would be able to select multiple components, and clicking on the create draft, you would be able to get a Word document with already prepared content of those components that you selected. That will wrap up our demo. And now it's time for questions.
want to go ahead?
Sure, if you like. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. I didn't really have a question. I just wanted to say, and I couldn't read the screen, but tremendous work and tremendous presentation. I couldn't get that up. You're demonstrating really good environmental awareness of all the different things that are going on, just the technical aspects of that. I was impressed by that. So I just wanted to say that I'm excited to see this in action, and thanks for your nice work. Over.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, any questions from the audience, please?
Thank you. I want to congratulate the team for doing this great job. However, in the start, you said you're working with a client who is having projects related to the government, and we all know anything related with the government means they work with very sensitive information, sensitive documents. You're using open source technologies in your design and implementations. For example, Docs-X4J, and we are all aware of the Log4j vulnerability that was observed from the open source community, and it turned the internet upside down. So how do you implement security in your development process? And we saw that it was 50 in 5 proposals, so 50% in 5. With this limited amount of time and limited amount of resources, how do you incorporate security in your development process?
Okay, I will start probably breaking down your question into 2 different topics. The first, the easy one, about 15.5. The meaning of that is that you would be able to get a draft. So as quicker as possible, you can start developing a new proposal. That's what is the 15.5 stands for. About the security part. First of all, we previously in the first semester used SQL-Lite database that didn't have a lot of security with this. MySQL allows you to encrypt the data at rest. While it wasn't implemented for our project, I think it's important that they have that ability to implement themselves if they would like to. And also, I think an overall picture on how we took a look at the security is we not try to use any other outsourced component. So there's plenty of APIs for the Word documents. But we're not utilizing, we are keeping everything in-house. So it's everything is on the server of the Rite-Solutions themselves. So the data not getting out of their internet. I think that's a really important part. That's the reason, first of all, why we use only open source software that are not communicating with outsourced entities. Hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Hi everyone, my name is Tom Gallagher. I'm 1988 UMass computer science graduate, so I'm old. And I've been in this industry a long time. So I have a few things I wrote down here I wanted to kind of cover with you. First of all, I applaud you on the architecture and the components you chose, all very relevant in the industry today. And the methodology, the agile methodology, that's all we use, right? 2-week sprints, continuous improvement, things like that. I run a team here in North America that does a lot of pre-sales work in response to, one of my teams is the proposal response team. And we didn't have a solution like this. So I have a team now building one. This is a very big need in the industry and a very relevant solution. Proposals are very time consuming, right? And I have a team and they can spend hours and hours because they're big complex proposals that we respond to for both the government as well as large corporations. And interestingly, I set the same goal. I said to them, build a system that will provide at least 50% of the content for my proposal responses within a short period of time, right, days. So I really applaud you on this because it just is a huge time saver because these things can, as I said, take up so much time. And you want to have really good content that you can go to and build the beginnings of the proposal, right? Is there a continuous sort of improvement or feedback loop? One of the things we're implementing is when we do a proposal, at the end of it, we kind of harvest it, right? What's the best pieces of this proposal that I can put back into my database and have a loop there? So there's a method for people to submit to the proposal coordinator or developer, whoever the role is, that they now review it and decide whether or not it should now be in. So I would ask about that, and if not, I mean, that's a nice improvement to make on a system like this. But again, very relevant. We couldn't find one in market to buy, so we had to build one. So again, kudos for this really nice piece of work.
Thank you. I think it's first of all, we would like to thank our client because most of the ideas, of course, coming from their experience and their needs, we're just implementing what they're asking for, as well as the feedback. I think when we started this project, we were thinking it's really a piece of cake, but the amount of the components that goes to this, right, is really extensive, and you can improve that as much as you can. Like, when we were looking at this, I think that the idea that comes to mind is when you go into Outlook emails and you're looking through your new emails. And when uploading a new document, you can probably display something like that. So, and again, the rating allows you to maybe sort the components better. And again, the topic modeling helped with this as well. So there is plenty of room for the improvements. So hopefully our client can work on that and get a progress as well.
Very good.
Any other questions?
So I'm interested in the component level at which you tag things. Also the fact that most proposals are fairly structured. They want to know past performance of similar projects, understanding the problem. Tell me about how you would do these three difficult problems I deal with. Do you take advantage of that structure anywhere in your tagging? And what's the lowest level thing that gets tagged?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's important to understand that this was only one piece of the whole project. And when we go to the basics and we look it up, what we want to get from this, right? We just want to, because I would kind of disagree with you on the terms that the proposals have specific structures. It depending what organizations you're applying to, it all depends. So our idea was to having the paragraphs. First of all, finding the tags that are representing the paragraph, the beginning and the ending. If there is a table, that would allow us to get the information from the table. So high-level components.
Okay, so yeah, my old eyes couldn't read a lot of your tag data. That's why I had to ask the question. But as a guy who works for Rite-Solutions and is working on a proposal right now, when this is available to me?
We will deliver. I think it's a good question to Mike. If Mike wants to clarify that.
I'll talk to Mike later.
Any further questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, so we go on a wellness break. Thank you, Valerii. That's the truth. Okay, folks, please be back in 10 minutes. Thank you. All right,
So-
glad.
Thank you.